while we're starting, let me say that this program will be recorded, and we should please put on our ethic cap so that we listen to the speaker very well, and towards the end, we'll allow for question and answers from our participants. Let me welcome you to the 12th edition of this research series. And just like I said, we're bringing another powerful professional. He's a HR professional and is a mentor to some of us in that aspect. He has been there for a while and he has shown his mark in that field. He's no other person than Mr. Oluyemi Adeosun. He's the Group Head, Human Resources, Accelerex Holdings, Lagos, Nigeria. He is a former council member for the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. He has a whole lot of certificates in that field, and he is also the convener of HR Mentorship Learning Series, which some of us are benefiting so much from. He will be talking to us on how to position and transit from academia to the industry opportunities. And you believe with him that this is no other time to learn such, especially with our experience of ASU, COVID, and the like. Let's hear from him. Yeah, welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aziz Lawal. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to, first of all, celebrate and appreciate you and everyone, the team behind this particular program. I've been following the WhatsApp group, and I can see how active different research opportunities and initiatives have been turning out there. Thank you for what you do. I do not take you for granted. And on behalf of all of us who are beneficiaries of this your laudable initiative and the team behind it, I say thank you. Again, thank you for bringing me to speak on this topic. Sometimes when you look around, there are many people who could handle any topic, but it's a privilege to be here. I'll just say a few things and then we'll go to question and answer. And of course, we can also contribute and weigh in. Now, the reality is that entering into the labor market, either the academia or the industry in itself has some challenges. Let me put it that way. Let's assume somebody's from school, from the university. Either you want to enter into the academia or you want to enter into the industry. There are bottlenecks, so to speak. Now, if you are in academics and you want to enter into the academia, or you are in academia, you are in the industry, you want to enter into the academics, there are also bottlenecks. Because I would like to say, I'm an economist. So the desire to transit from academia to industry is not a linear one. There are also people in the industry, believe you me, who also want to transit. Don't forget that the desire to be in the industry or to be in the academia, first and foremost, may not be motivated by financial gains. There are people who want to, so for example, one of my daughter's teacher used to work at GTB, and she had worked at GTB for 10 years, went back to learn Montessori and became a primary school teacher. Of course, she had to take a pay cut, but she told me she realized that she was happiest on Sunday every day of her life. And why was she happiest on Sunday? She was managing the children's section of our religious affiliation, a church in this instance. And she told herself one day that why can't I be happy Monday to Friday and be attending to children? And she found her way back to teaching. Are we together? So if someone desires to move from academia to industry, there's absolutely nothing wrong in it. Another variant to this is that some people may also want to play in the industry, not necessarily leave the academia in totality. Okay, and that's where we have the academia industry collaboration. So for example, today I am, so to speak, fully in the industry, but you can also say I'm not in the academia. Depending on what do you mean by being in the academia? For example, to the glory of God, I have 35 papers. Will you really say I'm not an academic with 35 papers? The only thing is maybe I don't teach or lecture in a university, but I handle sessions. I go to travel local and foreign to present papers. I teach students at different levels, at professional level, but I may not be a lecturer. Similarly, today, people in the academia to do things in the industry or for the industry. They may not just be a card-carrying member of a private sector organization. They do some of the things we do, we even literally do it for free. Maybe somebody is picking our brain. Maybe some of our classmates, they are calling us and asking for advice. It may even look like we are gisting, but we're adding some form of value, okay? Just to start by way of, by that introduction, okay? So moving into the industry is great, okay? It's not a bad desire, and it doesn't mean that you don't have a flair. Some of us entered industry or academia by chance. Let me use that word. When I mean by chance, I mean that was the first opportunity we got. I have friends today, they were applying everywhere, but maybe the university or the polytechnic, so to speak, clicked first, and they started there thinking, okay, I will change later. Some now decided that, look, there's no need to change. And some felt, look, what am I looking for? But some still retain that desire to change. So the very important thing is, why do you want to come to the industry? Now, there are different reasons. There is one thing, so to speak, to be very theoretically grounded, have utopian ideas, yet is another thing to be maybe practically or hands-on oriented. Now, when you are in the academia, there are certain general guidelines, irrespective of wherever you are in the world. For example, the kind of freedom or autonomy, so to speak, you may be able to maybe to a large extent within certain boundaries decide when you want to have your lecture, when you don't want to have it. Meanwhile, if you're in the private sector, you may technically not have, not that you are not free, but maybe not that free. So for example, if you are in the industry, students are actually your customer. Will your customer come to you and say, come again next tomorrow? So you will realize that when you are in the industry, maybe when the customer comes, you may have to see the customer almost immediately in certain instances, or have a very good reason. You may need to help me meet Dr. Okay, so there are certain trade-offs. It's easy, slightly, in the academia, for example, to stand up maybe in a paper or in a session and say, my opinion does not align with that of the HOD or the rest of the senior management of the department or faculty. The academia is built to support autonomous thinking and independent judgment. In the private sector, not that you can't have autonomous thinking, but there's a limit to which you can push it. Very soon, you may be looked at, perceived as you are not supporting the vision of the organization. Okay, so there is that intellectual freedom, and the range and the dynamics are different. The individual impacts are different. Generally, it is perceived or assumed that when you are in the industry, you stand the chance of any more money or revenue or income. And to some extent, this can be true. But some of us know today, some people in the academia who, so to speak, God has blessed. They've worked very hard. Today, they are in Germany. Tomorrow, they are in US. They are traveling all over the world, delivering papers, lectures, handling projects, getting grants. So success is relative. You can get it in either location, depending on the kind of determination and grit that you bring in. So in the private sector, generally speaking, the need for teamwork and collaboration is almost non-negotiable because there's a limit to which you can stand alone. Okay, all right. So now, when you are coming to the industry, sometimes penetrating may be difficult. And one of the reasons is the perception. There's a prejudice or bias that the typical private sector recruiter or hiring firm may have against a typical academic. Now, I'm using the word typical here because I don't want us to assume that everybody will have that bias or every recruiter will have that bias, but there are likelihood, high chances. And the reason is, thank God for today that, so to speak, we have a significant number of people working in private university, and the work ethic, or let me put it in a better way, perceived work ethic in the private sector is seen to be more firm than the public sector. Now, the private sector academia at the tertiary level is relatively at its infancy. I agree, we now have universities that are maybe 10, 15 years old, private, but the predominant superstructure in terms of ethic and work attitude comes from the public sector. Now, we're having an intellectual conversation here, and I'm speaking from a perspective, and I'm not trying to judge or critique. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm talking about the possible biases and prejudice that some people out there may have. And I'm not trying to say I have it. So I need to just put that out. I hope you understand what I'm saying, Dr. Lawal. I'm trying to say, because if you don't appreciate the kind of bias or perception, and the thing with perception, sometimes perception can be right or wrong, but perception can be reality. So if you ignore a perception or don't recognize the perception, and you don't appreciate what you may be working against, you may now not position yourself to demonstrate actively that, look, maybe you have 4 perceptions. All these perceptions, in my own case or in my sector, it doesn't apply. So, for example, you want to show that you can work under a strict regiment, maybe 8 to 5. Not that you want to wake up anytime you want and sleep anytime you want. For example, if you're at the academia, all things being equal, you may have your own office space to yourself. If you come to the industry, depending on the organization, they may put 10 of you in an open space. You may not have that kind of privacy, that exclusivity of space that you probably used to have when you are in the private sector. And you see, some of these things we will not appreciate them until we lose them. But it's important that we put it at the best time, so to speak, to enter the industry, in my honest opinion, is straight from school. Because there you are supposed to be young, 1. 2, you are supposed to not necessarily have experience, but you should be trainable. And then they can bring you on board the organization, maybe at 24 or 25 or 28 back then, and they begin to train you. It can be a management training program, graduate training program, those kind of things. And then they run you through different departments. Typically, by the time you are coming from the industry, academics to the industry, maybe you're already a doctor yourself, maybe you are 35, 40, 45. Yes, I agree, age is just a number. But there's this perception that you are probably set in your way, in a way. Now, that way is not necessarily a bad way, but can that way be aligned with the typical private sector way, the industrial way? Now, having said that, there are certain areas that are, so to speak, in sync. Let me use, hopefully all of us did math at O level here, and I'm saying that respectfully. There is something we call set theory in math. So in the set theory, you now have what we call subsets or intersections of sets. So if we are using set theory as an example, industry, that's a set, like a circle. Private academia, that's also another set, another circle. There are areas of intersection where, by that I mean overlap. Let me give you an example. So in a big standard private sector organization, they will have like an R&D department. That R&D department, to a large extent, has academic rigor, intellectual orientation. So one of my friends from economics department, Unilagia, a senior lecturer, about 2-3 years ago, reached out to me. One of the banks in Nigeria offered him employment as head of research and development. He eventually did not take it. He went back and forth. The salary, of course, was way significantly better down. But why didn't he take it? He said, if he had attained maybe like professor, he won't mind, but that he wants to be a professor. Why did the bank come to the Department of Economics, University of Lagos, the bank too is in Lagos, to hire somebody as their head of research and development? What they could have gone to another bank, but because they know that maybe when you come to certain analysis, all these our techniques, some of these our softwares that some of us take for granted, all these SPSS, Starter, and the different quantitative, qualitative, they know that people in academics are very grounded. One, they can use some of these tools as two, they can also interpret these tools. So when you have departments like research and development, or you have departments that deal with maybe analysis, it may be, and I'm not restricting this to social science only. It can be in any other department that requires certain level of intellectual rigor. The average academician is trained to have this rigor. That PhD program that we have all gone through, or some of us are still going through, helps you. So what do we do in PhD? Just to refresh our memory. There is a problem. What do they try to solve in organization? Problems. Not only are we able to perfectly, so to speak, identify the problem, then we can now come up with what methodology, what frameworks. Then we'll say we'll do literature research. Literature research is in industry will be like, what has been done around these things before? What was the outcome? What were the solutions? Which one can we borrow? Which one can we modify? So you will see that knowledge in the real sense of it is malleable. Skills are transferable. So as a professional, you must know the skills that you have that are easily transferable. Let me give an example. The average academician lectures. If you lecture, you teach. If you are teaching, in industry, we won't necessarily call it teaching. We will call it what? Facilitation. So when you are managing class, managing adults, we are probably teaching maybe undergraduate, BSc, masters, postgraduate. That means you can articulately identify, come up with a course curriculum. We may call it teaching or something in our own axis. They will call it a slightly different name. You can come up with a curriculum. You can train. You can facilitate. So what are this will also vary from industry to industry. Now, I just mentioned R&D for many, maybe manufacturing, production. Now, let me mention another sector, a complete sector. The consulting industry, which is, so to speak, private sector to a large extent, is also very close to academics. Check most consulting firms, the Big Four, for example, PwC, Ernst & Young, Oluyemi. Now, they go for people who have high or perceived superior intellectual capability. Most of them do research work. They may not write the paper like we will write the paper in the university setting, because their paper may be a little more towards maybe policy briefs than, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. They may not be very elaborate with the methodology, but that doesn't mean they didn't have a rigorous methodology. They gather data, they analyze, because this is how they consult for corporations and other organizations. It's not just what they think. They crunch numbers or data. They have data sources, so it can be through interviews, for example, and then they can synthesize it and come up with outcomes. Okay, so it's important that we identify some of these things upfront, because it will help position us to know the kind of opportunities we should watch out for and how to best sell ourselves, maybe when we go for maybe interview, assessment, as we try to take over. Okay. Let me just looking at our slide there. Industry runs slightly different way than academia. Typically, most private sector is fast-paced. They do a lot of meetings. But if you look at it as a PhD holder, you have a lot of autonomy, but you are also done a lot of work, a lot of discipline, a lot of diligence, okay, to be able to get whatever progress you have made. Okay. Now, in foreign countries, largely, and I'm saying this with respect, check a lot of things that we see today as either a product or a service. Guess where they come from? From people's thesis or PhD work. Some of the things today that we take for granted, check it well. It was somebody's PhD thesis that became commercial. Somebody's master's thesis that became what? Commercial. So as an academia that also has the intention of transiting, we should also look for how, either working with our students, how as much as possible, as we are trying to advance the frontier of knowledge, we are trying to see the project we are supervising, where possible. It may not be possible in all situations or scenarios. How are we using it? So let me give an example. So maybe somebody is in, say, industrial and employee relations or a business admin, and maybe you are supervising students on maybe employees' satisfaction, those kind of things. You can now focus it at what is contemporary in the industry today. So maybe the JAPA syndrome and employee retention. So that we are not just, of course, I agree the students should be able to choose the topic of their choice, but when we are guiding, don't let them just choose any random thing, something that they could have done it 10 years ago. There are some cutting edge things today. When you are doing your research and also supervising research around those cutting edge, there's no way you will go for maybe an interview or something that you won't be able to add significant value. Okay, because you'll be able to consult, and what you are saying is not just theoretical. Okay, we are not just quoting Adam Smith or quoting John Maynard Keynes. We are not just quoting Henry Fayol. We have distilled it, and we can relate it to today's contemporary post-COVID situation. So this is a very important things that can help. Okay, in no particular order. I wrote here that finding a mentor is sponsor, but let me be a little more direct. A good starting point is your direct friends that when you went to academics, they went to industry. Try and see how you can revitalize your relationship with them and third ways, especially those that are in the industry in an area where you have interest. Yes, I know they advertise vacancies inside the newspaper, they advertise online, job boards, but there's still a lot of informal announcements. They just say, oh, I need somebody that does this. It's not everybody that wants to go and pay to advertise. So if you stay in touch with some of your guys, and so for example, how am I doing my PhD today? Yes, I know the universities, they announce, they publish. For about 5 or 6 years ago, one of my friends that we did MSc together, and always known that I want to do my PhD, was one who called me and said, all right, how are you? I said, friend, are you still interested in PhD? Unilag is closing tomorrow. I have to rush that day to go. So you saw that I came back to academia because I kept in touch with my academic colleagues. Due to keeping in touch. So anytime you still tell them that I still want to transit to, they may begin sharing maybe job vacancies with you or opportunities with you, and you keep trying it out. So even if they are not yet applying, when you see a job description or something, first check it. In that job description, maybe they list 10 or 12 things. Your reality and the 12 things. Can you tick 8/12 or 10/12 or 12/12 or 3/12? What if, for example, you can tick 8/12? It may not be a bad attempt to shoot your shot. Let me use contemporary street language. What's the worst that will happen? They won't call you. What's the best that can happen? They call you. Now, if you can do 7/12 or 8/12, the 4 you can't do, why can't you do it? Just like you are getting trainings. So, today we get trainings on maybe how to better write research, how to use one latest software, how to calculate data. Different aspects of academia we are getting trainings. The area in industry also begin to get trainings there. So let me give you an example. You are an account lecturer, but you also pursue your ICANN and ACC. Just like my Ogaya, Dr. Aziz Lawal, is in business administration, but it's also what? CIPA. That way, nobody can edge you out on the fact that, oh, you sound good, but you don't have the industry certification. So you need to, if you don't have already, gravitate towards it. And if you have, continue to embrace and pursue continuous development from the practical aspect, of course, without necessarily neglecting your academic base where you still find yourself. Now, when there are any opportunity, for example, maybe the radio station or a TV station invites you to talk, that's a good opportunity. Yes, they've not invited you to come and sell yourself, but the way you will answer those questions will tell you. I'll share an example. Recently, at the HR mentorship, one of our facilitators spoke so well in 90 minutes that in 1 week got 2 job offers. Note, the presentation he came to do, he didn't come to say, this is my CV, but the way he presented, people were saying solutions to their problems, and one of them reached out to me, and I reached out to him via the Zoom link as he was presenting. So maybe you go to a radio station or TV station, they give you 10 minutes. And the way you, whatever, it doesn't matter what you are speaking to. They can tell you to come and say, oh, this ASU issue, there is a way you will speak. They will say, wow, this person will be good for our industrial relations. Or maybe they call you to say, oh, this flood that is ravaging some part of Nigeria. So when you have any media visibility, it doesn't matter whether it is print, it is online, it is radio, TV, don't just think about it because sometimes some of us, I'll go and eat the government ad. Yes, you can eat them ad if they should be eat ad, but think about it. If a CEO is listening to this thing of a private organization, can they say, wow, this guy will be good in our PRO team. Wow, this guy will be good in our market intelligence team. Again, I started by saying that there will be some resistance. Some people will say, why do you want to cross to the industry? You need to have a strong one. Okay, you need to have a strong one. And I think this is a good opportunity to say this. I read a book written by Bill Gates. The title is Doing Business at the Speed of Thought. Okay, and Bill Gates in that book said, the purpose of education, and I'm sharing this with us because technically, if you are in the academia, you are in education. Say the purpose of education, irrespective of the course of study, is to increase our capacity to think, to analyze, and provide solutions. And of course, ultimately implement them. Now, your years in academia should have increased your capacity more than any other person to think, to analyze, and provide solutions. So, for example, before 5 years ago, when I started my PhD, the way I was thinking and processing things is not the same as 5 years later. So, can you imagine what one of our core jobs, irrespective of our area of professionalism or endeavor, is that we are helping to teach students how to think on a day-to-day basis. That is a skill that can be transferred to the corresponding aspect of the industry. So if you, for example, identify a mentor, and don't let us be proud. When I say a mentor, it can be your undergraduate student, somebody you taught 6 years ago. The way life plays out, you know, sometimes some of us we want to be proud. Yes, he's your student, but he's now in a position to make a recommendation on your behalf. Don't be shy or timid, and don't be arrogant. Don't come and say, no, I was your student, but you're still treating me like your student. If I'm not in the academia, really. So you can, some of your students should graduate from your students in quotes to your junior friend. So I'll be able to say, my brother, look, I'm looking at this, I'm interested in this. I'll send your CV. They help you look at it. Okay. So there are, for example, you may have, like me now, you may have 35 papers. But when I'm submitting my CV for an HR role, I only list papers that are related to HR. So if only 7 are related to HR, the remaining 28, I don't add it. I'm not just trying to impress you that, oh, I have 35 papers. If it will not be relevant to the organization I'm sending it, what do they want to use the paper on economic policy to? Except I'm applying for a job that is economic oriented. So for example, I did economics, but I'm specialized in human resources. So you need to be able to assess your transferable skills. What can you do? Now, there are several things some of us in the academia do that is also very important. Sometimes we take it for granted. And there are some of the administrative roles we owe. Maybe you are an exam officer, sub-dean, dean, HOD. You know, there are so many committees. And sometimes some of us are just doing it like Jackie, we are just working. Look at it, those committees. You are in disciplinary committee, this committee, maybe you even helped students to prepare them for a competition. You took them abroad to Ghana, to Benin. No, those kind of, we were part of NUGA. You see, what I'm trying to say is that let's open our minds. A lot of things we do that some of us, we don't even include it on our CV because we just saw it as, it shall work, or God said I should go and do it, or I was nominated from my department. Look at it very well. There are skills and competencies that you have garnered by doing some of these things. And relative to the vacancy you are looking at, some of them part-time may not be useful. Yes, it's good to have one master's CV, but when you're applying for specific jobs, don't send maybe the 10-page or the 5-page CV. Look at your CV again, customize it, tweak it to the specific role so that you can stand a better chance, of course, of going there. Okay, so prepare your CV for industry standard. I alluded to it briefly here by saying that, for example, I hardly apply for anything in the industry and include my 35 papers because that 35 papers alone, that's already like 4 or 5 pages. So what do I do? In some instances, I don't even include any of the paper, but I have a one-liner to say, publish 35 papers, and I put my Google Scholar, my, what do we call it, research gates, those kind of link to say, so if you are interested, I just put at the point of dissemination. So let's say I have 31 papers, publish 31 papers in the area of labor, manpower, blah, blah, blah. Then the link. If they want, they can click on the hyperlink and then go and see everything. But if they don't want, that doesn't bother. You know, there's this one go they talk to you. No, okay. So prepare your CV in industry standards. Typically, what are some of the achievements you have made that you think will be meaningful from an industrial perspective? List them. What are the projects you have handled? Some of us do things, maybe you are in the university venture, which is a business side. Okay, you've been engaged in certain things. Some may not even be on the job per se. Maybe you are supporting a friend, you've helped people with feasibility studies. These are transferable skills today because most organizations, when they need to do a new project, for example, they need to do a thorough evaluation. So you have done things like project monitoring and evaluation. Don't let us take it for granted. Then if anybody is on this call today and you are not on LinkedIn, please go there. I'm begging you, please go there. Some of my lecturers today, they are also my friends. You know, one or two of my lecturers, for example, we did masters together. Some are even my junior when I did masters, but we are still friends. When you just check, I'm using my school, you just see the name and see Department of Economics, University of Lagos. Nothing else. It's too, but some of these people, because I know them personally, the places they've traveled to, it's not yams. All this African Economic Research Consortium, United Nations Development Program, ECOWAS, all those things are things that some private sector will find very fascinating. That, wow, you've been to 22 countries. Meanwhile, maybe they are looking for somebody to help the expansion into Africa, and you effortlessly. Some of us are even bilingual. We speak some French. Yes, you won't put on your CV that at least you have a conversational skill in French. So be on LinkedIn and don't just be there. So, for example, look at people in the industry. What are the things they wrote on their LinkedIn page? The ones that you are, I'm not saying just, so for example, I won't just go to Dr. Aziz Lawal's LinkedIn and just go and copy everything there. No, if I read Dr. Aziz's LinkedIn page, maybe there are 20 things there. I may pick 2 or 3 things that are similar and tweak my own. Then I go to Oga Kazim Adesina's today, I see 1 or 2. So typically, mirror, at least if you want to go to industry, at the back of your mind, you have 1 or 2 or 3 roles you are considering or contemplating about. Go and check people in industry today who have those roles, see some of the things so that you can pick out the skills and then you can mirror your own particular skill set. Okay, attend the regular seminars, workshops. So, for example, again, using accounting as an example, if ICANN is doing, go there, you may be able to contribute meaningfully and interact. Okay, so when you also go to your maybe local chapter of your professional association, your non-academic now, and people ask questions, contribute. Maybe there are even WhatsApp group, contribute. There is a way you will, over time, it won't be overnight, over time, that you push yourself as an authority with practical value. Again, some people in the industry think we are too theoretical, and they don't know that theory in the real sense of it came from practice, and practice in the real sense of it came from theory. You cannot differentiate between theory and practice at the bottom line. Okay, so get relevant industry certification. If you already have it, many of us here already have it, be active in those associations. Don't be passive. Don't just say, oh, I'm CIPM or I have ICANN. Do they know you there? When they are doing things there, do you volunteer, participate, act active, whatever? It can be Nigerian Society of Engineers. It can be Nigerian Civil. Be active there. Visibility matters, okay? Then also brush up for interviews. I agree, you may not be getting 20 interviews in a month. You may get 1 or 2 or 3 in a year. Sometimes it's not the frequency or number of interviews we get. How well do we prepare and how well do we do? Sometimes, I'm not saying all of us, the way we dress for the interview, maybe you see 6 people, you know, back in the day when you used to go for physical interview, that person will be so odd, color riot, you know, simple to like a white shirt or a blue shirt, use your tie, so that you look like a private sector person, not just a laissez-faire. Do mock interview. Yes, you can do interview with your fellow academicians, but because you are trying to enter industry, talk to 1 or 2 people in the industry, like a mock, like a rehearsal. Don't feel a meeting moment when you're every day. If you want to enter into a market, sometimes talking to people already in that market, what you know, you already know it. Thank God for that. You just pick 1 or 2 things from there. Okay, all right. I just said, let me pick a few examples of people who, in the real sense, you know, have moved from academia, you know, and in my research, you know, it's easier to get information about people abroad relative to people in Nigeria. But I remember when I was in University of Ilorin back in the day, we had a lecturer, Professor Jimo. Professor Jimo, of course, started in the economics department, University of Ilorin, and then he later went to join Afribank. I don't know if you remember that bank. They must have been matched with any of the, they no longer exist as it is. He went to Afribank. I think the R&D department. Then from Afribank, I think he now moved to NDIC. Then later, I think the hunger to become professor came back. Then he came back to University of Ilorin, became HOD, everything. So what I'm trying to say is that people who are in academics, they move out of academics to industry, then they find their way back to industry and vice versa. So it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. If it's a desire you have, by all means, pursue it. In the interim, also begin to look for ways you can support the industry. A good example, you can begin to support maybe SMEs around you. You may be SMEs of friends, families, people from your church, your mosque, you know, people in your environment. So let me use my brother and my sister, Aziz Lawana, where you are, you see some people have small industries. So, okay, let me consult for you on HR, free, don't pay me. I'll just be coming maybe once a month, 2 hours, look at some of your people practices, so that you can now have on your CV, in addition to your academic experience, to say, and you'll be able to list maybe 4 or 5 SMEs, what they do, the owner, and say, oh, I did what you call the organizational restructure, I did job description, I did review, I did, because that is what people want. Nobody wants to be like the guinea pig. Are we together? And that's why we are looking for experience, especially because if you are coming from academia to the industry, you are not 21. Now, so we hire you and we'll begin to train you. We want you to come with some form of mastery ab initio, so that you can hit the ground running and you can be productive for us the way we want you to be productive. So as a round up, you may apply 20, 30, 40 times and they won't take. Please don't give up. People in the industry too who want to change from organization to that sometimes have to apply countless number of times. And this is sometimes a factor of demand and supply. Okay, so don't get distracted and don't have this feeling. You know, sometimes some of us will think, oh, everybody in the private sector must know somebody before they get a job. Where I'm working today, everybody I know there now, I met them there. I didn't know anybody. I saw the advert online. I applied, went through a consulting, a recruitment firm, did 1 or 2 stages before they sent me to the site. So the MD is, so deduce your mind that only get it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there are no some people, but the majority of the people working in private sector didn't get there because they knew somebody. Just like some of you too can testify, it's like me assuming that everybody who is in the university shall know somebody. There are also people, maybe they just got a first class, the department retained them on merit, and they became academicians. So if you know people, all well and good. There's nothing wrong if you know me or I know you, and I have competence for something and you recommend me. The important thing is when you recommend me, you should be proud of me, because when I get to the interview, I do well. If I also secure the job, I'm also doing well. Not like they will never consult the person who referred me in the first place. Okay, all right. I think I'll just leave it there. Don't forget, networking is very critical, and network across board. Your students are a very good source of network. Please never underestimate what especially if you have been a good lecturer or facilitator. Please, I know 1 or 2 lecturers, for example, in my space during this ASU strike. By myself, I called them, collected their bank account number, and transferred something to them by myself. They didn't beg me. But I remember how they treated me. And my mind said, I don't know what my guy is going through. So there are also many people that we too have helped if we need their help. Don't also assume that first is if does not have, he will not be able to, and he will say, I don't have. There's no I'm not talking about money anyway. I'm talking about, oh, brief organization in these areas. Okay. Sorry, my network took me out.
Problem, sir.
My network took me out. I apologize for that.
We're still with you, sir.
So I'm through with my presentation. So I'll leave the floor open for maybe questions or contributions or comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oluyemi, because you're already part of us. I wish you all the best in your PhD. Amen. Very soon we shall come and celebrate with you. Amen. All right, participants, Amen. Let's have your questions or comments. You can just unmute yourself and ask your questions, or you send it through the chat box. The floor is yours, participants.
Good evening.
Good evening. We are with you.
My name is Oluyemi Jacob.
All right.
I really appreciate this opportunity to learn from people in the field. What I mean in the field, that is implementing what is being taught as theory in the university system. I've also experienced what you are saying, that rejection will come, and I've been rejected so many times this year. I've been rejected over 30 times this year, and I'm not giving up yet, because I want to even change. I want to change career or change environment. But one thing I've come to understand is that sometimes you need to, what are those things I need to do? Because there was a time I submitted my CV to a particular institution, and they told me that my area of focus was different from theirs. So that was one reason why they did not take me, and I was a little bit disturbed. What can I do to make sure that my focus is what they want? Because I've worked so much that I need to move on, and this is just limiting me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. for that question and contribution. I also salute your persistence and your perseverance and your resilience. By God's grace, it will pay off. Thank God that as academic, one of our strong points is research. Now, in the process of job hunting, research skills also come in handy. So let me give you an example. If I want to join a manufacturing company, even before I submit my CV, I should first of all read up every material possible, or at least online, Google, and search. Okay, we know how to search using different search engines. That's part of our homework. So you said something. You said they said their focus and your focus does not completely align. So even before we send our CV, even if it is for 10, 15 minutes, we try and say, okay, what do they want in this company? When I say what do they want, starting from basics like what's their vision, their mission, what are their core values, what are they into, then what kind of problems do they have currently or have they had in the immediate recent past? Now, what skill set do I have and how can I push myself? Now, one thing with some of us academics is we have so much to give and we now want to throw everything at something. They don't, what happens to them is either they will see that, oh, this person is too big for us, or this person is too diversified for us. So let me, if we are talking one-on-one and you were a little more explicit, it will have been easier to customize. But I also appreciate that we have a diverse audience here, which is also very good. So, like I told you that if, for example, I'm sending my CV to a specific organization, let's say it's an NGO, for example, an NGO. I also check what kind of NGO is it. So, for example, I have maybe 2 or 3 papers around gender. Those are the papers I will focus on. And then I'll talk about the things I've done around gender. I may play down on some other things in my 2 or 3 page CV that I'm sending, because I want to show you that, oh, I know about advocacy. These are some of the interventions I've collaborated with other stakeholders on. So it's using that our research skill to either online or in person. If you are now lucky, again, for example, let's say you are targeting a particular organization and you are submitting your CV there, you can go to LinkedIn and use that organization to search. When you use that organization to search, there will be many people's names who will come up. You may be lucky that one of them will even be an alumni of your university. And that's already a common ground. If you are lucky, if you check that person well on LinkedIn, you may be able to send an email, or you get their phone number and you call, oh, this is Dr. So-so and so from University of so-so and so. I see that you work with, please, can I have 5 minutes of your time? Or can I book 5 minutes of your time later in the day, or when are you available? You may be lucky person, so okay, I can spare now, and now say, oh, this is what I'm trying to do. What insights, suggestions, or advice do you have for me? Some may even say, okay, send your CV, let me see, and give you 1 or 2 feedback to tweak it or customize it so that it looks more relevant to the industry. Okay, we also need to broaden sometimes our search. You can put your mind in a particular industry, which is not bad, but there may also be auxiliary industries that can help you. So, for example, look at consulting. It's a big space. I just mentioned one now, the developmental space. So, for example, if you are somewhere like in Abuja, we have a lot of different NGOs. Of course, the different NGOs have slightly different areas of focus. So if you keep searching and you keep shooting your shots, applying, sending your CV, modifying your CV, especially when you are targeting existing job vacancies, check what do they list there. How do you mirror your own work experience that will be aligned with? So at a more intelligent level, there's what we call applicant tracking system, ATS. Applicant tracking system typically is a software, not a person. When you submit your application for some roles, it's not a person that is checking to shortlist or not to shortlist. What does applicant tracking system use? Typically, it's looking for keywords. So maybe it will do like 70 to 80% match between keywords on the job description and keywords on your CV. If it doesn't establish that this is not a good fit, and sadly, that's the end in that kind of context. So research online, try and get 1 or 2 people in that organization. If you can't get in that organization, in that industry, so like if you want to maybe access man, and you search your network, you don't have anybody in access, because it's the same. It's like if I want to penetrate University of Ilorin, I can't get, but I now get somebody from Obafemi Awolowo University. Chances are the advice they will give me will not be significantly different from what somebody in University of Ilorin will give me, because I understand that I'm not trying to discount localities and conquests that can help us. And if you're even lucky, that person also will even have somebody in Ilorin. So let's just make use of what we have and not focus on what we don't have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Any other question, comments from participants, please?
Good evening, sir. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Perfectly.
Okay, sir. Good evening, everyone. The question I have is for the host and all the other members. As we all know, the Nigerian labor market is ageist. So it discriminates against, people that are above a certain age. Another thing is that for women especially, we just find some kind of comfort in academia, because I would say that the atmosphere favors, family life and stuff like that. So how do we navigate this issue of when you're trying to apply to somewhere and then they don't want to accept you because you're above a certain age and you know, you're a woman and then they're thinking maybe very soon you're going to take maternity leave or something like that. So please help with this question. Thank you, sir.
Doctor,
thank you so much. What you have said is a sad reality in certain cases, but in the real sense, discrimination and the International Labour Organization, ILO, and even Nigerian local laws frown against discrimination of any type, either discrimination by gender, discrimination by age. Now, on the surface and in reality, it's not age that gets a job done. Now, I'm not talking about maybe an 80-year-old person or a 70-year-old. Once you are still within a working age, and working age would be maybe, so to speak, 18 to 60. But on the flip side, why are people looking for young people? So that we also face and confront our reality. They assume that young people generally tend to be more agile. It's an assumption. How valid that is, a story for another day. They also assume that they will be more flexible. But let me also shock you. There are also certain roles. You won't believe it. I've also seen people lose jobs, for example, because they were single and not married. Because certain roles in certain organizations, they will say that if you are single, you are a flight risk. If you are married, for example, as a woman, and they entrust you with funds, they will say, before you will think of embezzling, when you look at your spouse, your 3 children, so it depends. So where are we coming here is now, the kind of job you will now look for, you too will be more targeted. So don't necessarily, if you are, for example, 38, don't go and be applying for entry-level bank job. Your age is way above the rate. So look for more mature roles. So let me give you an example. This is just an indicator. Maybe you go and apply for a program manager in an NGO. They won't need someone that is 24 or 23. So it is important to know that because you are not as young as you used to be, what are the experiences you have gathered? In what sector of the industry? You know, there are different sectors in the industry. There are different industries. In that, we use industry in 2 ways. Industry to me, everything that is non-academic, but industry to us subsectors. So financial industry, manufacturing industry, aviation industry, tourism industry. Look for the aspect of industry where your academic experience and exposure and research over the years is most tangential to. So that way, when you are crossing, you are not thinking of crossing down. What do I mean? Maybe you're a senior lecturer. You are not trying to go and become entry level in fintech. No. If, for example, you are still going for R&D, you will still enter R&D as a senior person. And in that instance, they want a 24-year-old to come and be the head of research and development. Except, of course, there are certain maybe skills or certain softwares that only a young person. So let me give you an example. Today, relatively, at least in Nigeria, you don't want very many elderly people involved in coding, in software. But that doesn't mean that it's only a young person that can do coding and software application. So my appeal to you, my challenge to you is that let us look for what most mirrors our reality. And let me use this example. And this is an academic setting, and I'm saying it respectfully. I don't mean any content. So back in the days, and even till now, we still have a few private sector organizations that discriminate against, for example, HND and BSc. I know some, almost all of us here know 1 or 2 stories like that. But when maybe only 4 or 5 passively discriminate, focus on the 18 that doesn't discriminate. So if, thank God, the federal government, for example, and state does not discriminate, there are also industry jobs in government. I hope we know. It's not everything in government that is academia. Anything in government too that is not academia, to a large extent, is also a type of industry. Okay, so let's explore those areas too. And there are people in the private sector too. They have children. Some of them took a break for their marriage or for their children, and later they came back. You see, when we are working in a place, for example, in the academia, where sometimes we seem to have time on our hands, what we use that time to achieve? Maybe by way of certifications and experience and growth and knowledge, competency building, capability building matters. So that when you want to transit, they won't look at you, man, as a woman. They won't look at you, man, as a mother. They will look at you as human resource. And in this context, gender is immaterial. Man, if somebody has a problem and somebody else has a solution, I've never entered a plane and I'm concerned whether the pilot is a man or a woman, whether the pilot has children or does not have children, whether the pilot is a Christian or a Muslim. All I'm concerned is this pilot, I hope he has proper training and enough flight experience to navigate us through any turbulence. Man, I'll round up by saying that at the height of excellence, discrimination doesn't thrive. If our competence or capability is average, then they can say, oh, Christian of my profession. I can be an atheist, but you still need me, sir. You may not invite me for your personal thing, but when the problem of work comes, you will know that it's this atheist. We are come and do your engineering, abacadabra, solve the problem for us, and we move on. Thank you so much for your question. Very brilliant question.
Thank you, sir. Any other question, comments so that we round it up? Okay, fantastic. Doctor, let me thank you once again. I know Lagos is very hectic. You have really tried for us after coming from this 9 to 9 in Lagos. You still found time to talk to us. It's a pleasure here. And I think that when next we call you, though I've been enjoying your mentorship, and I hope very soon my transition will be smooth too. So let me thank you once again. We didn't pay you for this and you came all out to share all your knowledge, some of this knowledge and more with us. We pray that God increases you in wisdom, in health, and in abundance. Thank you for coming. Participants, thank you. By Wednesday, by the special grace of God, we have yet another very, very good professional to talk to us on another burning issue. I thank you all for coming. See you next time.